Okay, friends, welcome back to our Bible study through the book of Acts. And today we're going to be in the second half of chapter 17, and we see that Paul and Silas, they have a shift in focus here. You know, some of you, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but some of you have a pretty hard time with just how unbelievable all of this seems, and you're in good company. There are certainly times when I read things in here, or I examine what it is that I believe, and I think that is pretty tough to believe, especially with everything that we know today about science and all of the research around the way that our brains work and all of that. This stuff can be hard to believe at times. So how is it that we believe this? What we see here today is that Paul and Silas, their mission shifts. They're preaching in the synagogues again. That means they're talking with other Jews, brother and sister Jews, people who already believe in God. And then they shift and they begin speaking to some of the philosophers in Athens. These are pagans. These are folks who believe in a multitude of gods. They don't believe in the one God of Israel. They believe in a multitude of gods, so certainly not the same one that Paul and Silas believe. And they begin to reason with them at kind of a higher, like a real heady intellectual level. And what it reminds me of is that the church from very, very early on has a tradition of not avoiding deep, difficult questions, but embracing them. That we shouldn't be embarrassed to engage in deep conversations about how it is that we make sense of all of these things. I had the opportunity, as many of you know, to spend some time this summer with Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's the famed astrophysicist. These kinds of conversations with him, to say, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but I want you to know that what I believe isn't just a whole bunch of superstition. It's rooted in deep, reasonable thought, just like the work that you do is rooted in deep, reasonable thought. So what do we learn here from Paul and Silas's interactions in Athens about how it is that faith and reason intersect for us? So this happens in Athens on the Areopagus, which was a city in the center of the city where people would come to debate ideas. If you're going next year with us on our trip to Rome and Athens, Corinth, a few other places, we're actually going to go to this place. And if you're not on that trip, the Journeys of Paul, I'd love for you to join Amy and I on that trip. You can go to the website to find out more about it. But they're there, and when they're there, Paul points this out. He said, I saw an inscription, and the inscription was to an unknown God. He says, I've noticed that there are mysteries that you have perceived about the world. That you've got all these gods, and you got the God of this and this and that, but you also recognize that there's mystery in this. Well, the unknown God that you recognize, I actually know that God. And he goes on to talk about the Jewish God, the God who created the heavens and the earth. He says, let me build on what you already know and talk about something that you have identified as a mystery. At the end of that talk there at 27, he says, he is actually not far from each one of us. This God's close to us. Then he quotes their own philosophers. In him we live and move and have our being. Then he quotes some of their poets. For you are indeed his offspring. He says, look, here's the thing. If you come into this knowledge of who Jesus is, it will turn your life upside down, like we talked about yesterday. But I also need you to know that like the thought work that you have put in doesn't run contrary in every way to embracing now faith in Jesus. For us today, it has less to do with philosophy and more to do with this whole science thing. A lot of you know this, but I believe that this debate, this sense that there's some kind of dichotomy between science and faith is totally bogus. I think it's kind of an outdated notion. The reality is that we as people of faith, men and women who believe in the way of Jesus, we can say, we want chemistry and physics and biology to discern as much as possible about the physical realities that are around us. But we also believe there are spiritual realities that are around us that can't be determined through physics, biology, or chemistry, that simply transcend the means that we have through the scientific method. It doesn't mean we set aside the scientific method. It means, as Robert Barron says, that faith doesn't run contrary to reason. It goes beyond reason. What Paul says to the Stoics, the philosophers of the time, is he says, look, here's the deal. I have discovered things through a relationship with God. I have discovered things that go beyond what you've been able to discern with your finite minds. Let me tell you about that. What we can say to those who have a very closed off view of the world and only believe that truth can come through the sciences is we can say, I have discovered things through a relationship with God, through the study of the scripture, through prayer. I have discovered things that go beyond what can be discerned and discovered simply through the scientific method. And I want you to know about these deep mysteries also. This is the reason why it's important that we learn about the sciences in schools and we send our kids to learn about all of these things. And it's also important that we raise the next generation and that we ourselves be growing up to discern and to learn the deep spiritual mysteries of the world also. There are physical realities. That's the bottom line. There are physical realities. And there are spiritual realities also. And we need to learn everything we can about the way the world works physically. And we need to be open to learning about the spiritual reality that is all around us also. So I'll leave you with that question. How is it that you're engaging with learning about the deep truths of the spiritual world that's around us? How is it that you're learning about the spiritual truths of the world? One of the ways is by being a part of this Bible study. And I hope that you'll stick with it. And I hope that you'll invite other people to be a part of this also. God bless you, friends. Keep with your reading, and I'll see you next time.